Welcome to the Empower Series Online. My name is Clifton Johnson. I'm the founder of the Empower Series Incorporated. We're a 501c3 organization brought to you in part by the generous donations of Comerica Bank, AE Media Group, and you. Thank you. Our topic today is going to be when your income decreases but your bills don't. Now that is a topic of major concern today, and our presenter is going to be Alderete. She's the Director of Education and Community Relations at Money Management International. I want you to get your pens and pads ready, make comments, ask questions, and more importantly, I want you to share this with other people because this is a topic of grave importance. Without any further ado, allow me to introduce you to Alderete.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today for this session of When Income Decreases But the Bills Don't. We're going to be talking about managing your finances during a pandemic. My name is Alderete. I'm the Director of Education and Community Relations at Money Management International, or MMI. MMI is a 501c3 nonprofit credit counseling and housing organization, and we offer many great services to help clients achieve their financial goals and manage their finances. So whether you'd like to schedule a free initial debt and budget session, or you're thinking a credit review or debt management plan might be right for you, we have a service that can help. Give us a call at 866-889-9347 or visit us at www.moneymanagement.org. Many thanks to the Empower Series for having us on today. The Empower Series is brought to you by support from Comerica Bank, AE Media Group, and of course your individual donations. To learn more about the Empower Series or check out some of their great upcoming programs, visit them at www.empowerseries.com. Thanks again for joining today. I'm looking forward to sharing some helpful tips and information that can help you manage your finances during this difficult time. And I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy.
Let's get started and talk about some financial help and resources to help move us through this time. Right now, with the temporary closure of businesses, schools, and many public events, you might feel alone, but of course you aren't. We really are all in this together. These are definitely unprecedented times, and it'll require us to take stock and utilize the resources around us. So whether you've experienced a layoff, reduced hours, loss of income or tips, or just increased financial expenses, the good thing about a pandemic of this magnitude is that there are many organizations that are rallying to help those impacted by the coronavirus. That includes government, state and local programs, as well as many of your creditors. So knowing where to go for help, what to ask, and then also how to document your situation are all key aspects of getting the help that you need. So today we're going to talk about 4 main strategies around managing your finances during and after the pandemic. We'll talk about how to analyze your available resources to keep your household running and get the help you might need. We'll also look at a priority-based spending plan using the resources that we identified. Then we'll talk about how to work with your creditors to ask for forbearance, payment arrangements, and other options. And finally, we'll talk about implementing a recovery plan when the pandemic is over and your finances are getting back to normal. So let's get started. So many of you have probably heard the term beast mode, right? But usually we talk about beast mode when we're talking about sports or competition. Right now, I ask you to think about putting yourself into beast mode as we tackle our finances. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we're going to explore all the options, maybe make some difficult choices, and have important conversations in our household. Because we all have one goal in this, and that really is to get through the current crisis with the least impact to our families. And that includes our family finances. So that means we'll put everything on the table and just do what it takes. The current situation is constantly changing, so it'll be important to stay connected to ongoing updates and also to openly communicate at home to make sure your family members are on the same page. So having a family meeting is a good first step. Include kids in the discussion about the current situation and how it's affecting everyday life and possibly your finances too. So while we never want to frighten or burden our kids, we also don't want to keep important information from them. If you have older children living at home, it might be necessary to have them contribute now by using their own money on everyday expenses, whether it's money they have saved from a job, savings, gifts, whatever. And if that's the case, set up a tracker so that if you do use this ready cash on bills, you can make the commitment to pay it back in full once your income is coming back in. It might also be necessary to forego some expenses that everyone in the family could be taking for granted. So a family meeting is a great place to start. Once you have everyone on the same page and the lines of communication are open, it's time to analyze your resources. And right now, it might not feel like you have too many resources to analyze, but you probably have more than you think. So we'll look at all the different ways you can find and leverage cash and the community resources to get you through this time. If you have emergency savings put away, now might be the time to use it. And I know it can be hard to dip into your savings, but it could avoid you creating debt. I'm sorry, to handle necessary expenses while your income is temporarily reduced. So if you do have money put away in an emergency savings account and you choose to use it, it'll be important to maintain whatever adjusted budget you create once your income gets back to normal so that you can replenish those emergency funds as soon as possible. If your job and regular pay have been impacted, you might qualify for unemployment benefits. If you're part of a union, you'll want to contact your union representative to see if assistance is being offered. The Department of Labor also has new options for different states where they can amend their unemployment laws to provide benefits if your unemployment has been impacted by coronavirus. So if you haven't done this already and you find yourself in this situation, check out careeronestop.org. This is a site sponsored by the Department of Labor, and it's a great website with more information about unemployment benefits and also a tool to help you identify eligibility and then file for unemployment insurance benefits in your state. So I have a screenshot of the website up here, and you can see that you can choose the location where you live. You can scroll to the bottom to link over to the Department of Labor where you live to get those specific resources and then also to apply. If your household regularly has more than one income and only one person's pay has been affected right now, there are a couple of different ways that you could think about temporarily increasing the take home pay of that person or those people that are still receiving paychecks in your home. So, first, review your withholding selections and temporarily adjust them. So, this, especially if you've been receiving income tax refunds, could be a good opportunity. A lot of people don't complete their W-4 with all the exemptions that they could, and they do this in order to receive a refund or to make sure that they don't owe taxes at the end of the year. But this reduces the take-home pay each paycheck. So those who still have paychecks coming in can make an adjustment to their W-4 anytime to increase that pay a little bit. This is pretty easy. You can do this by contacting your payroll department. And in a lot of cases, you can just do this yourself by logging into your HR system and then completing a new W-4 electronically. Also, if you pay state income tax, you can review both your federal and your state level withholdings, and you might be able to adjust them on both sides. Similarly, others in the household could be contributing to a 401k or a 403b, or using payroll deductions to put money into a savings account. If you're strapped for cash, now might be a good time to examine those deductions and consider stopping them just temporarily to bring the needed cash flow into your household right now. You can start and stop these kinds of paycheck withdrawals pretty quickly and easily to free up funds that might be used during a time of crisis. The other thing is typical gig economy jobs like Uber and Lyft have been heavily impacted too. And so even though those gig economy positions aren't available right now to bring in additional income, if you do want to think about bringing in additional income, consider that there are some positions that are in higher demand right now. So look into things like service delivery drivers, work from home contractors. I know a lot of retail stores are hiring those stores that are still open for essential services. So these are just different things to consider if you're looking to bring in additional income right now, if cutting those expenses and utilizing the resources available just isn't enough. If you're a small business owner, you may be eligible to apply for a low interest disaster loan through the Small Business Association. The SBA is working with states to provide targeted low interest loans to small businesses and nonprofits that have been severely impacted. So look into that if you are a small business owner. You can visit the SBA website at sba.gov and just look for information about coronavirus or visit sba.gov/coronavirus. Many banks are also offering assistance and making policy adjustments right now. Bankrate.com has compiled a list and they're updating it regularly, and it's got all the different financial institutions that are offering support. And it's also a good idea to contact your creditors directly. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. So, what you'll want to do is check out this bankrate.com site and then see if your creditors are on there to get an idea of the programs that they might be offering before you contact them, so you go in with a little bit of knowledge. But while we're on the topic of banks and loans, I want to talk for just a minute about credit cards and using credit cards to pay bills. So, credit cards are generally one of the more expensive ways to close the gap between income and expenses. And this is because the interest can really add up. So, if you have to use credit cards to get through this crisis, what you'll want to do is start with your lowest interest rate options first. So, this might be going to a bank or credit union that you already work with and see if they've got an offer available, or using a lower interest rate or maybe a balance transfer offer or a new credit card to get those low interest options. Sometimes it can even be 0%. So you'll want to make sure that you look into that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that you might find yourself tempted to take money out of your retirement plan. So I ask you to keep in mind that unless you're 59 and a half, this is likely going to have early withdrawal penalties and also could have tax penalties. Um, Even if you aren't paying a tax penalty because of a relief package, keep in mind that this is always sort of a last resort option because the time value of money really does add up. So um, if you're considering taking a loan from your 401k or pulling that money out early, please consider other options first. So again, so these types of withdrawals or loans typically only if absolutely necessary. I wanted to talk about some other resources available to help get through this. There are a myriad of other resources out there. I know some of them, school districts are providing free meals at school pickup locations or bus stops. So if you have school-age children, you might want to contact the school in your area to find out if this is an option where you live. A lot of utility companies, phone companies, internet providers, all those service providers are also offering help and either suspending disconnections or fees, some of them offering payment assistance programs. I know even Comcast is offering free access to internet in some cases. So you'll want to contact all your service providers or just search utility assistance from United Way to see what resources are available to help you there. Here's another great website that I wanted to share with you. This is United Way Worldwide, and they've created a COVID-19 Community Response and Recovery Fund. And this is designed to support local United Ways and 211. So 211 is the United Way's source of information in times of crisis. You can visit 211.org/services/COVID-19 and scroll through links to get to links for available resources. If you'll scroll to the bottom and you'll see available resources and they'll have them all listed out for you. The other thing you can do on this site is search for your local United Way and then connect with them to find specific local offers where you live. So again, this site is 211.org/services/COVID-19. We recently learned that many consumers and small business owners are going to receive government stimulus checks. And this is really great news. The important thing to remember is that this money is intended to help bridge that gap between income and expenses. So when you do receive that stimulus check, if you do, it might be a good idea to use it to build your emergency savings or reduce debt. Things are changing so fast right now, so even if your income hasn't been affected at this point, it could change. So saving as much as you possibly can now is the name of the game. You want to decrease expenses, save as much as you can, even if your income hasn't been affected affected so that you're prepared in case something changes and it does affect you. So you'll want to make sure that you're staying up to date on changes too. Another resource I wanted to share with you is an internal resource here at MMI. We're dedicated to providing regular updates to help consumers navigate through this unprecedented time and the coronavirus. So you can visit www.moneymanagement.org/coronavirus and get regular updates. You can also sign up for a success newsletter on that page where you'll get ongoing tips for creating income and stretching your budget during the pandemic. So we're keeping you updated there. All right, so we've talked about some good resources, and you're thinking, I'm sure, of some other resources that are available to you. So once you've completed that first step of taking stock of your available resources, the next thing you'll want to do is evaluate your budget and create something called a priority-based spending plan. So this might sound easy, but it can be really hard to do. We become accustomed to living a certain way, and sometimes the line between what we want and what we need can get blurry. But it's time to go, remember, into expense reduction beast mode. And although this might not be fun, it is necessary and it's just temporary. It'll help to have your family all on the same page again. So remember, having that family meeting is important. And so everybody's involved and invested when we talk about tightening the budget and reducing those expenses. So let's take a look at that process now. You'll want to start by taking a hard look at your expenses. Priority expenses include things like shelter. This, of course, would be your mortgage, or if you're a renter, your monthly rent payment. Also, food, utilities, insurance, transportation, medication. These are all must haves. But even on these priority items, it's important to resist the urge to overspend and engage in mass buying. We've seen a lot of this recently. It's recommended to have a 2-week supply of necessary items on hand for a quarantine or other emergency situation. And of course, it is important to have a reasonable amount of necessity items, but it's also critical to be smart with your money during a crisis. So when you're thinking about expenses, everything that's not a priority should be deferred as much as possible right now. Even those things on a monthly contract might be negotiable. So if you're thinking, gosh, I entered into a contract for this and I know the contract lasts for another year, they're just not going to be able to do anything to change that for me. That's not necessarily the case, particularly during a crisis. So you'll want to call and contact everybody on that service provider list. It might not be pleasant to think about cutting cable, apps, or streaming services right now, but it might be necessary. It's the name of the game here, like I said, is to save as much as possible and cut those things that we don't need to help us do that. And it's just temporarily. The other thing is we're seeing many gyms, activities, entertainment venues, all of these things are temporarily closed right now. So it's a perfect time to save money on those types of personal and entertainment expenses. If there's any good thing about the current crisis, it's that social distancing guidelines are a really good opportunity to spend more quality time at home with our family, and kind of get back to the basics on that free and low cost entertainment. So, if you haven't already done this, think about family game nights, family movie nights, cooking more at home, going for a jog or walk outside, those activities that don't cost us any money. And this is going to go a long way in stretching the budget too. So let's talk a moment about insurance. So of course, we all know that insurance protects us and mitigates risk in disasters. And of course, we don't want to let our insurance policies lapse, but think about ways that you might be able to temporarily maybe increase deductibles and drive the premiums down. So, different situations apply to different people, but another example would be if you currently cover a teen driver, you might want to consider removing them from all but one vehicle. So what I'm getting at here is contact your insurance agent and then ask if there's anything they can do for you temporarily. They might also have some options to postpone or make smaller payments until your financial situation changes. Health insurance. If you do have health insurance, keep in mind that currently the coronavirus is covered by health insurance providers similar to other illnesses. And so even though testing might be free, you're likely still going to be responsible for regular copays, deductibles, out-of-network fees, those types of things for treatment. So the bottom line is, again, I'm going to say from entertainment, to personal expenses to insurance, whatever it is, contact those service providers and ask what options they have available to help you. You might be surprised at what you hear. So, if you've done all these things, when you cannot meet all of your obligations, the third step would be to work with your creditors. And so I mentioned this briefly just a few minutes ago when we talked about the resources, but working with creditors and financial institutions could be key in helping you manage your finances and recover strong. So we've already established a priority spending plan. These items that we see here on the sticky note on the screen, along with food, are the top priority items. But what if, even after you've examined all your resources to maximize your cash flow and you've reduced your expenses as much as possible, you still can't make those payments, or maybe you can only make a partial payment? Well, it's time to contact those creditors. As I said earlier, if there's any good thing, it's that so many people are rallying to help, right? So many creditors are implementing programs to help those that have been impacted by coronavirus. But it's up to you to reach out. It would be great if our banks and service providers would contact us and say, hey, we thought you might be going through a difficult financial time. We've got these services available to help you. But you guys know that's not the way it works. So while help might be available, they're not going to automatically give us a hardship plan. So we do have to call and ask for help. Some programs are already in place to help stop evictions and foreclosures. And I know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have already announced guidelines. So many service providers are offering help in the form of hardship forbearance options for homeowners that are struggling to pay their mortgage. But if you rent, you'll want to contact your landlord right away and ask about rent assistance and forbearance. Same goes for student loan servicers and auto loan providers. A forbearance is just a temporary reduction or suspension in payments. So if you take this option, you'll have to pay the forbearance amount back when your regular income resumes, or especially in the case of mortgage loans, you might qualify for some other workout option or mortgage modification when it comes time to get back on track. But it'll be important when you do talk to your creditors about these payment arrangements to ask about all the terms, right? What does this mean long term? What are my obligations? How is this going to affect my credit? So on and so forth. Some other things that creditors might offer right now are reduced payments and fees or just different hardship plans. So again, be sure to stay up to date with ongoing changes and programs and ask your creditors about specific options you qualify for and how they'll affect your account long term and how they'll affect your credit report. When you do talk with those service providers and creditors, it's important to take notes. So consider writing down the date and time of your call, the number that you called, the name of the representative that you spoke to, what you were offered, and then the plan that you ultimately agreed upon. And then you'll want to monitor your statements regularly to make sure that you're getting the assistance that you talked about. And of course, make sure that everything is reporting on your statements and your credit report as you discussed as well. Once you do agree on a workable plan with your creditors or your service providers, it's also a good idea to put together a letter that just summarizes the details of your discussion and then mail it to them. The customer service mailing addresses are pretty easy to locate for most creditors. They're going to be right on the statement, or you can just visit their website to get it. But this is going to be a good step because this will ensure that you and they have in writing sort of a summary of that formal agreement. And then if things aren't reported to your credit bureau as discussed, or if things aren't happening as discussed, you do have that documentation backup when you dispute. So let's take a little bit of time to talk about strong recovery. And I know that if your income has been reduced or you're struggling to make ends meet right now, thinking about recovery or thinking about saving might not be, exactly where your headspace is in right now. But I do want to talk about it because things are going to get back to normal, and it might not seem like it will right now, and it might take some time, but it will happen, and you will start receiving regular paychecks once again. But when this does happen, you might still need to work on repaying loans, bringing accounts current, checking your credit report and score, different things like that. So I do want to take a couple of moments and talk about how to build a plan for future emergencies and really make sure that you can recover strong. So once your regular paycheck resumes, you'll want to pay off any loans, credit card debt, or other obligations as quickly as possible. Of course, pay obligations first and then consider maintaining that priority based spending plan or sort of that emergency budget that you created just until you've repaid the obligations that you owe. It'll make it much faster. And then this would, of course, include any forbearance payment amounts and then short term borrowing and debt paid back first. Also, know your rights. If you do happen to get behind on your bills, or if you were already behind before the crisis began, and you start getting calls from debt collectors, keep in mind that they must follow the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And so we see some of those points up here on the screen, the hours that they can call between, some of the procedures that they have to follow. But it is important for you to know what your rights are regarding debt collection if you find yourself in that situation. And then make sure that you monitor your credit report over the next 12 months, and then, of course, regularly every year to make sure that creditors who promised not to report delinquencies or partial payments actually do so. So you can order each of your 3 credit bureau reports for free once a year. And we suggest ordering one about every 4 months or 4 months apart so that you can cover the entire year with those 3 different credit reports from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. A lot of banks are now offering free credit scores too, so you'll want to monitor that also. You can obtain your credit score for a fee by going to myfico.com. And of course, if you want to check your credit report, it's www.annualcreditreport.com. We see that up here on the sticky note. If you have negative reporting on your credit report because of the coronavirus pandemic, or any other thing that you've already disputed, keep in mind that you can also place a consumer statement of up to 100 words on your credit report, and this is intended to explain the situation. So a couple of key points to keep in mind if you do choose to make one of these consumer statements. The first would be to be succinct. So you don't have a whole lot of words to work with, so you want to be clear and use specific dates, names, and supporting evidence if at all possible. The consumer statement gives you the opportunity to give the facts about a situation to potential lenders or creditors. So, for example, let's say you've been the victim of identity theft and you've disputed the fraudulent charges, but the investigation doesn't resolve the dispute. Your personal statement could serve to help explain the situation. So the second point would be don't make excuses. A personal statement doesn't carry enough weight to counter a lengthy series of credit problems. So when it's written as an excuse, something like I forgot to mail a check, a personal statement could be interpreted as an admission of having poor money management skills versus an explanation of a one-time event. So you'll want to be careful of that. The third point, if you choose to make a consumer statement on your report, is to realize that your statement might not sway lenders. Because personal statements aren't factored into your credit score, they might not influence whether or not a lender does grant you credit. But if you do take the time to write a thoughtful and specific statement, it could demonstrate to that lender that you're educated about your rights, that you take your credit and your credit score very seriously, and of course, that you're proactive about your finances. So it's never a bad idea. And then lastly, if you choose to make a consumer statement, keep in mind that it's important to remove the statement when the information is deleted. So after your creditors stop reporting the information to which the consumer statement refers, you might want to take that statement off of your credit report, because if you don't, it could alert lenders to credit issues that you've had in the past, even though they've already been resolved. So again, I talked about this a minute ago, and I know that the last thing you might want to be thinking about right now is how to build your savings if you have to use your savings. But it is important to talk about, because when we think about strong recovery, we really do want to think about managing through this current crisis, but then preparing ourselves financially to handle whatever comes next. If there's one thing that I've learned in life is that life changes and it throws us curveballs when we least expect it. So this is part of a strong recovery plan. Once this current crisis is over, you'll want to revisit your budget as a family and then commit to a pay yourself strategy of savings. And often this is done through payroll deduction. So if you don't already do so, consider putting emergency savings into a separate account that you don't touch, of course, except for in times of emergencies. Maybe you set an initial goal to save $1,000 in an emergency fund, maybe over the next 12 months. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. Maybe you commit to saving $83 to $84 a month. Maybe you use a step-up spending plan where you save incrementally larger amounts until you reach your goal. Whatever works best for you. Once you've reached that goal of having an emergency savings account with a balance of $1,000, then you can continue to build until you have a cushion that would let you pay for your expenses for at least 3 months in case another financial crisis or emergency arises. After you're back on your feet, if you still have debt, you might want to consider implementing a rapid repayment plan to pay that debt down. Sometimes this is also called a debt snowball or a debt avalanche, and you can use it. You can look at using a debt repayment calculator to help you pay down that debt as quickly as possible with the least expense. There's different ways you can do this. You might want to tackle the account with the lowest balance first. You might want to tackle the account with the highest interest rate first. It's completely up to you, but those calculators can help you decide. I do want to point out, though, that a debt snowball isn't for everyone. So a lot of people were struggling to pay bills before this pandemic. And if you're in that situation, you might find that you're unable to manage all of your debts, even more so once the current crisis is over. So if you were behind before coronavirus and you find yourself unable to make those debt payments, or you're not able to make debt payments as a result of being impacted by coronavirus, and you just can't seem to catch up, remember that you always do have that option to talk to a credit counselor. I talked about this at the beginning of the session when we introduced the session, but you can go to our main site, moneymanagement.org, and learn about credit counseling and debt management plans if you do need help paying off debt. So the last thing that I just wanted to remind you of before we close is you really and truly are not alone. You know, we've heard this time and time again. We're all in this together. It's kind of become the mantra of our current situation. But I think it's true and important, particularly when all of us are isolated in quarantine. We can start to feel alone, but we really are not. Everybody is affected by what's happening right now in one way or another. So again, one of the good things is that so many organizations, federal, state, local government agencies, they've already established plans to help, and your local community has amazing resources too. So just some key takeaways and points. Remember to visit us at www.moneymanagement.org/coronavirus to sign up for that success newsletter and also get regular updates and FAQs as the circumstances change. Contact those creditors, have a discussion with your family, build an emergency budget, and do whatever it takes to take advantage of the resources that are available to you to manage through this time. Again, the name of the game is reducing expenses and saving as much money as we possibly can, even if our income hasn't been affected, so that if anything changes, we're prepared to handle it. I really hope this information's been helpful in giving you some ideas on where to start and how to approach your finances during this time. So again, thanks so much for joining today, and I hope everybody has a great week.
Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.